Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Lowcountry Lowdown. My good friend Zachary Chapman has been nice enough to join us today. Zachary, thank you so much for coming on. I am super stoked for this. Like you and I don't know how long, like 3 years we've known each other, give or take.
Yep.
Y'all are about to find out. One of the best personalities I've ever met. Just genuinely a great guy, does really great work. Local entrepreneur, really excited to have him. Zach, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been down here in the Lowcountry for 6 years now. I have 6 kids and been married for 12. Just had our anniversary. So, I run a handyman and construction business called Zack Of All Trades, and started it maybe 10 years ago in Utah and been down here for 6.
Okay, so you weren't from here originally. You were in Utah. Did you grow up there? Were you born there?
Born and raised in Utah. Been there my whole life. Thought I'd be there my whole life. Got married, and the wife was like, "Hey, let's go somewhere new."
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah.
So
Make a plan, get married, things change, you know?
yeah.
Speaking of that, 6 kids, was that like premeditated or did that just happen?
It actually was very planned.
Okay.
I'm very religious, and so we wrote out a plan and said our prayer to God and was like, hey, if this could happen, we would love for 6 kids, and we'd like the first 2 to be boys, and then
Yeah, it landed. You got
we got
nailed it.
I mean, it was down to the genders and the timing and everything.
Really?
Like, our original plan we wrote when we were dating. We're only a few months off.
Wow,
from our.
that's crazy.
Yeah, so it's been great.
That is actually
change a
wild,
thing.
man. You know, a lot of people, it's so much of parenthood is just kind of figuring it out. You know what I mean? I have people, a lot of folks my age are starting to kind of just get into having kids, and they ask me advice. They're like, oh, what did you do? How did you do? You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know anything. I mean, you might. You seems like you're much more planned. For me, man, parenthood has always just been about figuring that out. And I wanted to touch on that a little bit in relation to your business as an entrepreneur, and particularly as a contractor. Obviously, you're working all types of crazy hours. Your wife, I've met her a few times. She's absolutely wonderful. I'm sure that helps you out a ton.
Oh yeah.
If you're gonna have 6, you got to pick the right one, man. So
That's number one piece of advice.
Yeah.
Find the right woman and, figure it all out when you're dating before you
yeah,
tie the knot.
no, incredible investment there. You did great. But so how do you balance all that, man? I mean, what does a daily life look like being an entrepreneur, trying to grow and expand your business and managing clients? And I think you've got a few guys that work with you now, but I imagine for the most part, really a one-man show, and then 6 lives to structure around that, and also making time to be a husband and all that else. I mean, give me a little bit of insight into what does that look like?
Yeah. So on a daily basis, and this is one of the reasons I became a handyman, is I was actually going to go become a physician's assistant and go through the medical route. And I realized as I had started my handyman business that I was almost making as much as I would as a physician's assistant.
Wow.
Yeah, I came down here and started making $45 an hour
Nice.
to start with, knowing almost nothing. And
Just day
working.
one.
Just day one.
Okay.
$45 an hour. I just said, I'm going to charge this, and I'm going to figure out how to be worth that.
Okay.
And so
that checks out.
And so I showed up, and anyways, long story short, it was a lot of skill building and everything like that. But on a daily basis, I could be home for half of the day. On a good day, I'm doing numbers in the office in the morning for a couple hours, and then I'm running out. And this is the stage I am now. I have subcontractors, and I have some employees or people that work. They're independent contractors, but they feel like employees.
Right, yeah.
And they're working for me, and so they know what to do for the job. And I've but this is the end of that. Starting out, it certainly wasn't like that. I was definitely working long hours as a handyman, and saying yes to probably way too many projects and running all over the place, and projects that I had some knowledge, maybe 50% to 80% of knowledge.
Close enough, yeah.
I did a lot of YouTubing. And
yeah.
a lot of calling and a lot of research. And then, but my big secret to success was I just cared more. That was what I tried to do, was care more than anybody else about
100%, man.
getting the job done.
Yeah, no, I say that a lot, to people who are trying to get into entrepreneurship, is if you've been working for somebody else your whole life, doing the traditional W-2 route, when you don't have that like whip cracking at your back, you better love what you do. You know what I mean? Because if you're not getting fired at 9:01, if you were scheduled for 9, you got to get your own self out of bed. And, if you don't love what you do, it's going to be hard to keep that up. I mean, forget about the money. You know, I know people who are getting paid just amounts that you would never really fathom, but they absolutely hate it. And maybe you can deal that, you know, for a long time if you've got that looming threat that if you slip up, you're going to get canned. But when you work for yourself and when you do your own thing, what I found is that if you don't care about it, if you don't actually have a personal attachment to it, you're going to have a really hard time being successful. And that's kind of, you know, what I thought always sets you apart as well. I'm glad you said it, is just that you at least appear to. If you don't, you do a great job acting, but you seem to genuinely care about what you do and the people that you serve. And I'm not going to sit here and slander an entire industry, but I'll say that it's a unique enough trait to have, man. I'm sure you've heard, you know, a lot of, you know, people talk smack about, you know, contractors and they overcharge and they underperform and this, that, and the other. And, you know, just caring about what you do, easiest way to build a business. You get the referrals and all that coming in as well.
That's an interesting thing. And if I could touch on this history a little bit. So I came down here in COVID-19. We arrived in November of 2019, which was
so right before
COVID
nice.
hit.
Great
And
timing.
A little backstory on us, if I may.
Yeah.
My wife was 6 weeks pregnant. And
when you moved?
When we moved.
Okay.
And we were, so back up because you really need to see the full story to get the contrast here.
Yeah.
So we were in Utah and I was working for $14 an hour as a medical assistant, trying to get in all my patient contacting hours.
And this was on like child number?
This was on child 2. So we had 2 kids.
Okay.
We were in a tiny house, which was a trailer with a bump out that we had renovated to make it look really nice inside.
Yeah.
And feel like a tiny house. And we were on this property that was like a wasted property that was like at a 45-degree angle, but we saw potential in it because it had like a farm and it had all these animals. Anyways, basically we were in the depths of poverty, I would say.
Yeah. We're paying the bills, but just barely.
Just barely.
Yeah.
Our rent was $200 a month.
Oh, dude.
Because we owned the tiny house free and clear.
So basically just like lot rent then.
Yeah, we were just renting the lot and paying a little of the utilities that we were using.
Sweet.
So we pulled the tiny house down here. I bought a diesel bus, renovated that, and we pulled that down here. And we arrived without a job, without any clients, with only 2 months worth of money to pay for rent. And my wife was, you know, about to give birth with a third child.
Yeah. So you got all 6 kids planned out to the day, and then everything else is just gonna happen.
Yeah, we just felt like God called us down here. We felt like this is where we needed to be. And so we were like, okay, we're just going to do it. And that actually, I was listening to the 10X book the other day. There's this book called 10X. And one of the things that the mentor in there says is go back and figure out your 5 stages for your 10X jump. Because right now, so I went from making $14 an hour to now I'm doing a lot better than that.
Yeah, don't worry about the number. You know, it's better.
We're doing much better.
Yeah.
It was a 10X jump for us. But anyways, the first step in that I think was having faith and just going all in. So when we went up to South Carolina, like our parents thought we were going to fail. All of our family was
on paper.
They were all expecting a call move. Like, please save me. I don't have the money.
This is our address. Feel free to send. You know.
Yeah. So that weekend we showed up and I called him like 2 days later and I was like, hey, you won't believe what happened. I met somebody at church. They've got work for me for the next 2 weeks 2 months and a place for us to park our tiny house. So we've got a job and a place we didn't have a place to park our tiny house. We just drove down here. We're like, we'll find a
Walmart
spot.
parking lot and TBD. Yeah.
Literally. Wow. So that's the faith principle we had to be in to make this work. And, you know, then we applied the same thing to the business, honestly. And that's the other thing I'd say about the business is, so I like Tony Robbins' stuff a lot, and he talks about, you know, do something that you love, and then, and actually Jen Sincero's book too.
Yeah.
You're a badass at making money. I love those books. Changed my life.
Yeah.
And one of the things she says is if you sell something that you love, then you're not selling that thing, you're selling love. And so in my business as a handyman, and then Tony Robbins talks about going above and beyond, you know, giving more than you ask for. And so whenever I was doing handyman stuff, you know, I'd be in these clients' homes and I'd be talking to them. Instead of being cold and impartial, I'd try to speak with them while I was doing that. Right. And I ended up kind of becoming, like, we'd become really good friends. And I'd almost be like I'm like, this is a therapy session. You know, people would unload.
Yeah.
So.
No, I can relate to that a lot in what I do as well, man. In real estate, you know, I run a small team, pretty modest, but one of the things that I look for when I do bring on a new agent, when I do my hiring, is I want to figure out, why do you want to do this? And I usually ask them, okay, what got you into real estate? Why do you want to do this? And I'm not going to say it's a disqualifying factor, but if they hit me with like, oh yeah, man, I just really love selling sunset, or house hunters, like, because it's just never
No,
like
you
that.
don't.
You go out there, it's not like you go tour 3 houses, sip some Chardonnay, and then make $1 billion. It's slightly more intricate. But to your point, you talked about being a therapist. It's not, your job is not always your job as an entrepreneur, especially when you're doing something super personal for somebody. It's one thing if you're dealing with somebody in my field where maybe they're on their 12th rental property, and it's kind of just formulaic and very, very simple. But when you're trying to help someone buy their first house and they've never, nobody, not only have they not bought one, no one in their family lineage, if they can remember, has ever bought one. They're paycheck to
Right.
paycheck. They don't even think of it as a possibility. And just everything that goes into that. You might spend a year, 2 years sometimes, trying to just make it work. And
Just
you get,
building that person up to the point where they can even believe where they can.
yeah, man. And you get like completely blindsided me. I thought I was going to be selling houses, but I mean, you get so invested with these people, man. And I'm not mad at it. It's not bad, but it's just so much more intimate than you realize.
Mhm.
I feel like, especially as a small business, I don't think it, kind of agnostic of the industry. I wouldn't imagine that a contractor would get that personal. But when you're
It's uncommon.
sure,
It's uncommon, and you have to be
yeah.
careful how you do it because you don't. Honestly, you're there. You're there to love people. You're there to help people, but
Mhm.
also, and that feeds into your business. But you're there to make money,
Yeah,
and you've got to be effective. And so I had to balance that. Like, okay,
yeah,
I can listen, but I'm still going to work well. I'm not the type of contractor that can stop
yeah,
and just talk.
right.
So I had to like politely keep working
Sure,
while
sure.
having a conversation, which is kind of hard because you can
You got to
mess up
focus on what you're doing. Yeah,
what you're doing in
for
front
sure.
of you.
Well, yeah. So why contractor work, man? Were you doing that at all prior to starting the business in South Carolina?
Not really. My sister-in-law started a pillow business like a couple years back, and she wanted
Pillow
these
business?
a pillow business.
Like
Yeah,
making pillows?
making like custom designer covers for pillows.
Whoa.
Yeah, no, she would clear 60 grand in a weekend.
Wow.
Yeah,
Dude, call
yeah.
up Mike Lindell. That's
These pillow covers went for like
60 grand.
150 bucks a
Oh my
piece,
God.
and people would buy like 10 of them, and she'd have like 60 clients buying. So she'd do all this marketing on like
Yeah.
social media and stuff,
Yeah.
and then she'd have like this buyout thing. She'd be sold out in 12 hours, and then she had all these seamstresses working for her. So one of her clients saw these hexagonal shelves in her
Mhm.
back, and they were made out of wood, and she wanted me to build them for her. She needed somebody, and I happened to be in her circle. So, anyways, I created her manufacturing process for that and got my hands a little bit into woodworking. And I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then, then I was in Utah and I was broke, and I was like, what am I going to do to like make
Yeah.
a little more money?
Fair. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I went on like KSL over there, that Craigslist down here,
Okay.
and I just got a job for this lady who was trying to up the value of her house real quick before they
Yeah.
before they came by to check the value on it. And I started doing some handyman stuff, and that's kind of how it took off.
Yeah. It's amazing how much ingenuity comes through when you're broke. It
When
really
you're-
brings it out in people. When you don't have an option,
When you're
you seem to
desperate,
find
man.
it. Yeah. Well, honestly, every entrepreneur goes through that for to some level at some point. I'm not saying don't make a plan. You absolutely should, but just know that it's not going to go perfect. You're going to have to adapt, and there's not going to be someone to call up. That's another thing, man. Working for yourself, if something's going awry, if your plans get blown up, you can't just like call in support. You can't call up somebody to help you out or bail you out. Hey, what do I do here? You just got to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think I really think that's been another thing that, and I would recommend that to every entrepreneur. Like, if you put your back against the wall and be like, and eliminate the door,
Yeah.
and you're like, look, I'm not leaving this thing until I do it right, and
Yeah.
I do it well, and
Yeah.
we're gonna and you set your standard. I love Chip and Joanna Gaines. I think they've got a really good kind of corner on the market there because you trust them. You would trust them to come up and do your house
Yeah.
because you would know even if everything went sideways, they would make all the right moves.
Yeah.
They would put you first. And so that's what you want all your clients to feel.
Oh, 100%. And that's, kind of to add on that, reputation is everything. They've built a brand. I mean, they got, Target deals now. They're doing everything. At a certain point, though, you don't just snap your fingers and get there. I'm sure they've had their own little struggles. And to your point, quality work and building reputation and trust, that's crazy because I don't know the exact numbers on it, but I'd imagine, there's plenty of contractors out there. It's a saturated industry. Same thing's true of what I do. The public has a lot of different options. And, if you've got 5,000 5-star reviews, somebody says something bad, you're probably going to be okay. But if you're on your second, third, fourth client and then somebody has a bad experience and they're putting 1 stars out there, I mean, that's 25% of your referrals at this point suck. And that's not good. That's not where you want to be. Obviously, with scale, you can get a little bit different. I'll use like McDonald's, not to badmouth McDonald's, but I don't think anybody is at any point surprised if they get less than stellar service at this point.
Customer service is dead.
No, it's just gone. There, it's.
If I see somebody that has good customer service down here, I don't care if it's a place that accepts tips or not. I'm tipping them.
If somebody smiles at fast food, they're getting all my money. Yeah, but like they've just built this almost immortal footprint at this point. But that's not really the case. When you're doing things for the first time, or maybe in your first, second, even many years down the line, not only is it going to help you grow, but you really can't afford to be anything shy of perfect. And that's something you got to navigate, right? Is like, you got to start somewhere. You got to figure stuff out. Not everything's going to go perfectly. But you really, on the other hand of it, you don't have that option. It's not kind of feasible to take these hits. So, being self-disciplined is absolutely imperative in policing yourself. And again, I think that just goes back to caring. I don't, just to make a generalization, you're probably making more mistakes consciously or subconsciously, I don't know, working at a McDonald's and, I don't know, running your own pop-up burger shop. You know what I mean? Just from simply caring alone. Not saying they don't care, but, if you're getting paid however much an hour to, put the burger in the bag, I don't know how personally invested you are in that. And, the quality of service is going to go down. I think that kind of segues into another thing I wanted to touch on. Obviously, the end goal eventually is to, maybe buy a little bit of your time back. Like you said, you've got some subcontractors that work under you now. How has that been for you kind of, learning to trust a little bit? Because now you've got your baby that you've spent, 6 years to build, and you've got your reputation, and everybody knows, hey, Zach's the man. And then, hey, Joe, the subcontractor, here's the keys to the kingdom. Don't mess it up. I hope you don't absolutely kill that. So how has that been for you, and kind of learning to trust yourself to expand and delegate a little bit more?
Yeah, it's been a really dynamic process, I think, because on the one hand, you can have somebody come in and they look good and they look, you're like, okay, great, you're going to do a great job. And then, so watching them, I feel like I'm a kind of a helicopter parent when it comes to like
Yeah.
subcontractors, especially the first couple. Like, I'm hovering over them and I'm probably annoying the heck out of them, and I'm like in their space and checking on them and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I try to be really clear. Like I'm a 5-star renovation company. So anytime I'm approaching a subcontractor, I'm like, hey, I do 5-star service.
Mhm.
So if you're coming in as a sub, I'm expecting 5-star service from
Yeah.
you. So bid me out for 5-star service, because that's what I'm going to be bidding you out as,
Mhm.
and obviously I have a little bit of margin on that for overseeing things. And, it's actually a really interesting process bringing subs on, because a lot of times you'll have occasionally, it doesn't happen all the time, but occasionally you have a client try to cut you out of the process and just work directly with your
Yeah.
subs.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah. And
People
it's
try to, get a little discount.
get a little discount,
Yeah.
and it's really awkward, because then they'll call you up and then they'll ask you to basically do your job as a contractor and come back in and oversee the process
Yeah.
a lot of the time. And so I have to be really upfront and just really transparent with all my subs and everybody. The hardest thing has been getting day laborers that are good, because sometimes you just have little jobs that do things, and people
Yeah.
say they have skills,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
then they come in and they don't have as many skills.
You might just be figuring it out a bit more than they let on.
So it's tricky, but once you have people that you trust and that do good jobs, then you just hold on to them, and you just use them for everything.
Mhm.
It's been a learning process for me, because I have a hard time firing anyone.
Yeah.
Like,
a little bit too kind.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
and
Like, you'll get it
so-
next time, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so I
Yeah.
have to end up going behind, like, all right, I'm going to clean this up. This has got to be cleaned up. So I've had to be more judicious on, like, listen, these are the elements that have to be cleaned up
Mm-hmm.
in order for this to pass and you to get paid.
Yeah. No, well, that's hard, man, because like, to your point, the helicopter, the kind of, making sure your service quality is maintained, but also you don't want to condition them that like, okay, just do the job and then I'm going to clean up afterwards, because then you're almost training them to just do
To
whatever.
just be lazy.
So yeah, there's the balance of, trying to figure that out. I would imagine, you probably have your guys that you've been working with for a while. From everything that I've heard, being consistent about feeding them is probably a pretty big factor as well. If you can get to a point, I know everyone's a contractor, but if they're kind of like almost de facto employees for you, if they get maybe, I don't know, 70-80% of their business from you, that probably breeds a lot more loyalty as well. But
And that's what I tell homeowners. I was like, you could work directly with a sub, but you're only one job for this sub. You can only install your floor throughout your entire house pretty much one time. Maybe in another 10, 15 years, you do it again.
Yeah.
But
if you got to replace the floor every year, probably not a.
No, and a lot of these subs are doing so high volume, that I might be 30% of their business,
Wow.
which is a decent chunk.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it sounds it.
But I'm not 70% of their business.
Right, you're not the only one. Right?
So I've had subs that have been like, you know what, if things go sideways on the job, I'm just going to leave the job. I'll just leave it.
Yikes.
Because I've got other things to do and I don't even want to mess with it.
So what do you do then? You just like block the number, never call them again, or what? How's that work?
So luckily I've seen things heading in that direction, and so I've stepped in and been like, okay, I'm gonna facilitate things from now on. And so then I tell homeowners that's one of the main reasons why I call myself a facilitator, because we have a lot of good labor over here, but maybe they're doing 70% of the things that they should be doing to get 5-star service.
Right.
They're missing that 30, and I've learned that they just don't understand the value of that 30. And so, but I understand that value. So I come in and I just bridge this gap and make sure that they do all of those things and explain to them whether they believe that it needs to be done or not. That's what I'm asking you to do. That's the job. And so I'll have them ask, sometimes they're like, why are you having me do it like this? And I'm like, just trust me.
This
is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so anyways, luckily I haven't had any jobs go sideways where the contractor like left and I had to have somebody else come in.
Yeah, no, that's great.
But I had to go in as a negotiator and be like, hey, look, I know. And sometimes, I'm playing both sides. Sometimes I'm like talking to my subs. I'm like, I know this client is really specific. They want a lot done. Like, just be patient with them, And then I'm going to the client and saying, I know this sub is finicky.
Yeah.
Just be patient with them. We're trying to work out some kinks. I appreciate that. We're going to do some extra things for you to make this value go up in your box.
Yeah. No, I mean,
so I'm trying to help both people out.
It is a balancing act, man, because that's, I think there's kind of two really crucial points when you're building your business. Obviously, there's the initial start, right? That's, I think for a lot of people, the hardest part is not only building up, those relationships and getting your business started and getting any sort of, traction and income is very difficult. But not only that, but kind of conditioning yourself to, especially if you've been doing the 9 to 5 for, however many years, or even just coming straight out of school, it's basically a 9 to 5, right? Monday through Friday, you're going to school and kind of changing into that mindset. That's a really tricky part, but also one that doesn't get enough attention is, when you go to scale, when it's time to grow, how do you scale your business without becoming the McDonald's, without becoming the Walmart, right? How do you get to a point where, okay, now we're transitioning from, a one-man show, very small business to like a small to mid-size, but we have to maintain, that level of service that only I've been able to provide, because it's hard to find anybody that's going to care about your business in the same way that you do.
Absolutely. It's super tricky. And honestly, that's one thing. So my wife has actually started working on online courses to teach people how to start handyman businesses successfully.
Oh, really?
We're actually in the process of doing an online business and doing consulting with that.
Oh, nice.
Because we get so many questions about handyman. How do you get successful? We've heard a lot of horror stories, for a lot of people that have burnt out because they weren't able to handle one or more aspects. A lot of times it's the books, their quality's there, but they can't manage the business. Clients don't hear back for months, and so they lose a lot of business and things like that. So so that's the initial, but then scaling is tricky, like you were saying, for all those reasons. And I think it matters that you create those long-term relationships with your subs, and you pay them well, and maybe even just slightly too much, honestly. So they know, and let them know, make sure they know and feel that they're getting a little cushion and they're getting some extra things for working with you specifically. And then, you really have to train them and just be that. So I try to be that person, really open and be like, look, at the end of the day, I don't want you to cut corners to save some time. If
Mm-hmm.
it costs me a little extra money to do, if it's going to cost me a lot of money, let me know. But if it's going to cost me a little bit of money, I want you to redo it. The other
Right.
day we did a
Right.
fence and we had some guys put some slats and they didn't notice that some of them were askew.
Mm.
And, that was an extra hour of time for them to knock those off, bring them down, hammer them back in again, cover them again. But those are the types of things that I will do to help instill that culture. And I think if you instill that culture, then it's just kind of the standard quo. And then you can, when people come in, I've noticed that the guys that work here have been with me for years are like, hey, we don't do it like that.
Yeah.
We don't do it. We do the best.
No, that's ideal, right? When you almost get people that, you're kind of like your lieutenants, right? They're kind of policing for you and you don't have to be there to helicopter the entire time. And I think that's a really overlooked part of, running a business. We always know it's pretty obvious, customer service, client experience, obviously that's at the top. That's going to remain at the top no matter what. But quality of life, not just for those who are using your service, but those who work for you, I think is really overlooked and really imperative. If you don't treat people right, if you don't kind of give them some sort of motivation to feel like they're personally invested in the success and the culture of the business, they're just not gonna do so much for you. And that's why I really do stress anybody, when you get to that expansion point, be as selective as you possibly can be with your hiring, with who you work with, because it's the same principle as we talked about earlier. Like, hey, if you only got 4 reviews and one of them's bad, that's tough. Well, if you've only got 4 employees and one of them is just bad attitude, lazy, that for the 5th guy coming in, that's what they see. That's what they see as acceptable. That's what they see as the standard, and that's just going to grow. 'Cause, 1 out of 4 guys. It's just one guy right now, but let's say you got 5x your business. Okay, now 25% being like that, and it's kind of a virus, right? It's going to spread over time. So being just as selective as you can be with that, and
I think being really open with your guys too.
Yeah.
And so 2 things came to mind when you're saying this. The first one is I like to take pictures with the guys while they're doing their work.
Mm-hmm.
And I make a big show of like, hey, guys, let's pose for this fence. You guys just did a beautiful job on this fence. I want you guys in the pictures. The guys are like, sticking their tongues out and smiling and like
Yeah.
making funny faces and stuff. And I'm like, here's one best fence builder in Charleston right here.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
talking him up. And, whether he or not he believes that, if I'm projecting that on him, I believe that some of that's going to stick.
For sure, man. Yeah, you got to reward positive behavior. And also, I don't know, do you find that a lot of the subs you're working with, do they seem to be kind of content in their role, or do a lot of them have, future aspirations of their own? Does it seem like, when they're viewing a future, maybe 5-10 years down the line, do they tend to see it as, hey, 5-10 years down the line, I'm going to be doing what Zach's doing, I'm going to have my own thing? Or do you think that it's more of an attitude where, hey, I'm going to grow with this guy?
It's surprisingly few that want to leave and go off and do their own thing. Most of them, they just want work. They want consistent work,
Mm-hmm.
and they just want to make that money, get the thumbs up, feel good about what they're doing, and have stability.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the level that most of them are at.
Yeah. Honestly, man, that's ideal. There's nothing wrong. I love an entrepreneurial idea. I love that, that spirit of trying to do your own thing. I'm not sure if I'd ever hire myself, because, I've always wanted to, go out on my own. I got my own ideas and I want to build my own business. And that's awesome when they're working for you, man. I'm the best employee you'll ever have for like 2 years, before I just say, hey, maybe I can do this a little better myself. I don't know. And that's just kind of one of those things. And there's nothing wrong with it if you have that attitude, but there's also nothing wrong with, hey, I don't want to take on the liability and the risk and all that difficulty of kind of branching out and doing my own thing. I'd be more content with growing within that system. So I'm not saying, don't hire entrepreneurial people, but I do think that, there's incredible value in somebody who is not content in the sense that, they don't care about what they're doing. They don't want to do quality work, but really somebody that believes in the system and the culture and is happy with staying within that and growing within that. Because ultimately, the more you grow, the better that's going to be for them. You get bigger jobs, they get bigger jobs, you get more business, that 30% goes to 35, 40%, and eventually, could grow to a point where, again, you might be making 80, 85% of their business at that point, which, is frankly good for them. It's consistent. They don't have to wonder about where that next check's coming from.
Yeah, and that's a big concern these days, especially because you can have a contractor that's you can be working for another contracting company, and they could be let go of a project, or they
Yeah.
could let you go because whatever, or they decide to take a vacation, and all of a sudden you're out for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in the roofing business,
Yeah. Yeah.
those low months, and everybody takes a vacation for a couple months, and they're like, well, I guess we're gonna go do another business for a couple months
Yeah.
while we figure out how to live.
No, that's tough, man. I kind of want to touch on something you brought up a little bit earlier. Moving here, you said you had this, this idea kind of came to you for whatever reason. You felt that, it was just where you needed to be. And coming here, you talked about, as soon as you got here within the church, you found this support system that sort of, when you didn't really know what else was going on, when you were sort of winging it, you had that, I don't want to say safety net, but you had that community to kind of help you out. How crucial was that to the way things played out?
Honestly, that was huge. That was massive. I felt inspired that we needed to be there to church that Sunday, like drive through the night basically to
Hmm.
to make it to that first meeting that first day. And I didn't even bring it up. Honestly, it was brought up later. We were going around the room and introduce yourself. You're new in
Yeah.
town, that kind of thing. Found out, oh, you're a handyman, and then later somebody came up after me. It's like, hey, I actually have this huge project, and I don't have good people. I don't have enough good people. Can you just come work with me for like 2 months? And I was like, sure. I was like, I charge like $45 an hour. Is that okay?
Yeah.
He's like, that sounds great.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
right out the gate. And so that was awesome. And he didn't even know my skill set at all. He's just like, I need somebody. You're part of the church group. That means you live to according to certain standards. I already know 80% of what I'm getting.
Yeah.
Hopefully, knock on
Mhm.
wood, right? And so that was instrumental.
Yeah. No, I mean, I cannot stress that enough is just the importance of having a relationship in a group of people. It doesn't have to be, church related. It can be, any relationship that you've built, but not being too prideful to the point where, you're not trying to, lean on somebody else for help a little bit. It sometimes it's just getting that first job, man. You know what I mean? Because, and you can't fault the public for doing this, but how hard is it to walk into a door to somebody's house and they say, hey, we're thinking about hiring you for this job, and have you ever done this before? And the answer is just no. You know, Granted, no matter who you're hiring, at some point it was their first job. But how hard is that to sell when you have no experience and you really have nothing to lean on? Nobody can testify to how good you did or didn't do your job. And again, you can't even really fault the public for that. It's a lot of money for XYZ project, whatever they're doing. For any level of service, that's a leap of faith that not too many strangers are going to take. So, being able to lean within your community at those early stages, and whether it's partnering with somebody who's been in the business a while, or just you know kind of leaning on your church group, on your family, your friends, whatever. You can't be too prideful, man, because it takes a village, and it's hard because you're doing it by yourself. And so, how do you do that, right? You can't take a village by yourself. So, just not having that ego, man, I think is absolutely crucial when you're just getting started.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to understand what skills make you succeed in your business.
Hmm.
If you're the type of person that can talk to people and basically, you're a little salesman-y a bit,
Yeah, yeah,
hopefully not overly, just the right amount, right?
right.
That's great. And I think you should use those skills to build your business. But if you're the type of person that doesn't like to speak to people,
Yeah.
then you do need, like, that's where having a partner to go get the
Hmm.
jobs
Yeah.
and do that, and then you are the solid skills guy in going in. So, but that applies for any business. Really understanding what your strengths are and then being able to leverage those
Hmm.
is huge.
Yeah. I mean, how would you say that you were? I mean, prior to this, you were doing the physician's assistant thing. What part of this really caught you off guard? Because what I find in my industry is real estate. They're either shocked at how imperative the sales aspect is of it, not in the selling houses. Everyone knows that's what a realtor does. But before you can ever sell a house, you got to sell yourself to a client. You got to say, hey, here's why you should hire me. It's not like you're the only one in town. There's no borders drawn. You know what I mean? And for in terms of what your area is. So that's for me, a lot of people are shocked about how much they have to market themselves. And then one thing I tell people to watch out for, and I really it kind of bothers me how much this happens, is people like zero in on that. That's their thing now. They're just like, okay, I'm going to get really good at convincing people to do my job, or that I can do my job and convincing people to hire me, that they kind of forget to actually do the job. And then the quality of service falls down. So obviously, hey, I'm going to be a contractor. I'm going to do handyman work. You figure you're going to be swinging a hammer, screwing a screwdriver. That's fine. What did you not see coming, and what kind of came at you that you had to figure out along the way?
So for me, there was a technical aspect that I had to overcome as a handyman because, my dad was handy and my stepdad's a contractor, but I didn't spend a ton of time with him. So I really didn't have a lot of those skills to actually do anything.
Okay.
Like I'm a
Yeah.
handyman and a contractor now,
Yeah.
but like I had a saying when I started out, and this was back in college when we were building the tiny house to save money on rent.
Yeah.
And it was 3x. If I do it 3 times, it'll turn out right.
There you go. There you go.
So, there was at least 2 times of messing up beforehand. And so the tricky part is, how do you do that on a client's house?
Yeah.
How do you
You
can't
go back
just
the
show
third
up-
day and you're like, trust me, it's going to be great this time,
You
guys.
can't just-
Yeah.
No, so in that case, I just had to. So that caught me off guard. Well, with every job, there's always things that catch you off guard. And so I
Mhm.
just had to get used to being like, okay, I'm going to research the heck out of every possible thing.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of great videos on everything that you need to do, most things
Yeah.
you need to do. And so researching the heck out of things was how I overcame that learning curve. But it's been a steep learning curve because I've gone through, and not everybody does it like this. Most contractors, they just go get licensed
Yeah.
and then they find subs to do the work. Which
Yeah.
is unfortunate because they don't have like a hands-on comprehensive knowledge of what they're
Yeah,
actually
not
doing.
to cut you off, and again, not to like badmouth anybody, but I I've come across it a lot where they say, hey, I'm going to be a GC, and they're almost like their entire job is just signing off on stuff. So you have subs that may go out and do the work, or for whatever reason they're not putting it in their name, whatever reason, and they just basically become this like technicality industry. You know what I mean? They're just going off and putting their signature on everything. No idea how anything goes down. And oh well, this needs to be compliant, so we're gonna have hey, here's my magic signature. You're good to go. And I'm not sure if that's exactly how that was drawn up in a lab when they were making the licensing laws. I don't know if that's how they thought it was going to be, but you see that in practice a lot, man. In terms of how it ends up being, which to your point, yeah, it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, and I really like the way that I've done it because I basically decided that if I was going to oversee it, I needed to be able to do the job completely
Mhm.
to basically a 5-star. I need to be able to do a 5-star job in every specialty. So if I was doing plumbing that day, I needed to know best practices for plumbing. So I would watch all the videos that I could possibly do about how to put in a shower valve, and there's a lot of great ones. And then I would go do that job many, 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 many times. And now, I have subs coming in and doing it. And so then I can just come in and point out problems and be like, oh, you messed up here. Like,
Right.
that's not here. I don't know if you haven't seen that. And so I did that with every single specialty, and that until I could come around and then be a contractor where I was like, okay, I know the pain of all of this stuff. And that's the other thing that people might overlook, at least in my industry. When you do it the hard way, or when you don't leave any stone unturned, then you can go back, and when your employees are griping, you're like, dude, I've done that job. I
Yeah.
know exactly what you're
Yeah.
going through. And if they're over griping, maybe,
Yeah.
if they're complaining too much.
Make
you're
sure
like,
they're on the appropriate amount of
the
gripe.
appropriate amount of
A
gripe.
sweet spot for the gripe.
Yeah, because they'll try to milk you,
Sure, yeah.
and get more money and stuff. And you're like, look, buddy, that's part of the job. Like,
Mhm.
you knew this is what it is. And if you didn't know yesterday, you know today.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, and I don't know if there's any way to do that effectively aside from just getting in there and getting the reps, because I can, you can read 1,000 pages of how-tos, or watch a bunch of videos. But, when you're spending half an hour dealing with this strip screw or whatever nonsense you have to deal with or anything like that, I don't think it really translates through just a manual, or, you might know it theoretically how something works, but actually figuring out, well, hey, here's how this is supposed to, but then, this problem always comes up and here's how we go through it and all that stuff that you just can't be prepared for, from a video or reading a book or a manual or something like that.
And I find too, like, to all the entrepreneurs out there, people can be mean. They can be, they can be hard.
Sometimes.
They can. But if you're really, if you can convey that you're going to do everything you can to make, whatever job you're doing as best as you can do it. And now that's on one side of the coin. The other one is if you pay attention to who you're talking to.
Yeah.
For me, it's a very spiritual experience, honestly. I do a lot of praying. that I'll be and be able to know if somebody's going to screw me over, basically.
Yeah.
You know, and that I'll be aware enough and set things up right so that it's really transparent. So if you're starting out a new handyman business or whatever, and you go in and be like, look, I haven't done that before, but I've got a lot of skills, and I will charge you I'll charge you 50% on the first one, and I will work at it. And people usually will give you a lot of rope. Is my experience. They'll be like, sure, I'll take a 50% discount and a chance. You know, and some of the times that's not the case. Sometimes like, I just want it done right. And you're like, okay, well, I'm not your guy for that one.
Right.
I'll help you with something else maybe that I know. But being really transparent, people will give you a lot of grace, and it gives you it opens a window for you to learn in a safe environment. Because here's the other argument, which I don't agree with. People will say, go to trade school for, 4 years, go through all of that stuff, and don't do a single thing in the industry, and then pop out and do stuff. By the time you're done with that, you're exhausted and you just want to make money, man. And then you just stop caring about people because you're just so fed up with all the BS you've had to go through, but if you go out in the field and you're like, I'm a huge proponent of on-the-job training. Yeah. If I'm not getting paid to learn, I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And so all of my learning experiences have been, I'm going to go out there, and people would just ask me, and, I'm honest with people. They'll ask me, can you do this job? And we're like, yes, I can do this job.
Right.
And what I'm saying in there is I either know how to do the job already, or I know enough to get started to know how to do the job. And I'm going to learn the heck out of this thing.
Yeah.
So by the time I show up, I will be as prepared and care about this job as much as I possibly can. And honestly, 95% of the time, almost, things turn out. A lot of times I've had to put extra sweat equity into it, a ton of extra, like, oh shoot, we did this wrong, I got to pull this off, I'm going to eat this cost a little bit. But the mileage that I've got out of it is the real stream of gold, and I always say, prepare the nest and just trust that the eggs will will fall.
Yeah, no, that's fair, man. I really love what you said about transparency. I cannot stress enough how important that is, man. And to your point, a lot of the times people give you a lot of rope, especially if you, hey, look, this is something that I'm kind of sort of familiar in this. I can do all these other things. I've not actually taken on this task before. I'll give you a discount if you just, under the understanding, hey, I'm kind of figuring this out, but I've got the skills and the experience to figure it out. And just being upfront and real with people about that, I mean, that's incredible. And
trust, immediate trust.
Yeah.
It's almost like asking, it's the same amount of, it's like that psychological thing when you ask somebody for something, like a favor, and they give you something, there's like a trust exchange there. Like, even if I ask you for a glass of water, like, I'm now no longer this impassive barrier. I'm human.
Right, yeah.
And then people see you as human, and they're like, oh yeah, human to human, interaction.
Oh, it's a guy, yeah.
Oh yeah, this is just a person who's trying to do a good job. And that, like, unless you find a total jerk and you should steer clear of those people anyways.
Yeah.
If they're a red flag client. But actually, I do the same thing in my estimates too. A lot of times people ask me to do stuff, and a few things will be outside of my immediate scope. So clearly I detail, and this has saved me so many times. In my estimate, I'll write out, I will do the following things and feel comfortable doing the following things. This is the area where there are question marks that I can't answer right now.
Yeah.
And so we need to be prepared for this. In accepting this estimate, you accept the understanding that there's some gray.
Yeah. Well, and
some question marks.
The thing about that, man, is so many people will just, they're not going to have that conversation. They're not going to put that in the estimate. They're just going to say, we'll figure this one part out. And then, or honestly, man, I've seen it where people are just kind of like, no, they probably won't notice if I just skip that. More common than you think, man. We've had to go back behind so many people. You deal with it in real estate constantly. You have XYZ list of repairs, and then say, okay, they're all done. And then you check behind them, and you're like, you just didn't do half of them. You know what I mean?
Did you think I wasn't going to notice?
You'd be surprised. A lot of people would just like take the invoice. And, it's paid invoice, and surely they wouldn't lie. They would. But I cannot hit on that transparency enough, man, because especially the newer you are or the tougher the competition, at some point in the process, you probably are going to struggle starting a business. That's almost guaranteed. At some point, you're going to have a hill to climb, and you might be short on cash. You might be, behind on your rent, whatever it is going on. And we have this natural inclination to just say yes to everything. Just absolutely, I'm the man for the job. I need this, and just take on whatever you can without being, upfront and honest. Or even if you're not struggling for money, people are just embarrassed to say, maybe I haven't really done that before, or whatever. it's to your point, more times than not, people are going to figure it out. And not only at that point, they're going to find out that you didn't know how to do it. And now you don't know what you're doing and you're a liar, you know?
Yeah,
And so it's not just a morality thing. It's not just because it's the right thing. It's also bad business. Like you're not going to do well if you're just going around, pretending to be something you're not. And to your point before, man, like it makes you human. People understand it, that's the beauty of being a small business, being local, shopping within your, community is you get to know these people, you have these relationships. I've hired you to do some jobs before, but I've also had you over for dinner. You know what I mean? I'm not saying every one of your clients is going to do that, but
it's actually happened surprisingly often.
It does, man, and when you build these relationships, it's just a so much more positive experience because it's not every industry, but in so many, trust is the number one factor because people don't know half of what you're doing. They don't, a lot of the times, if you can make the finished product look good, they're not going to know on a technical standpoint how, well it's going to hold up or how good it was done or, they might see the top floor. They don't know what the subfloor looks like. I don't know. You know what I mean? But to be able to sleep at night and trust that, hey, even though I'm not entirely certain half of what he did, I know that he did a good job. I knew that he cared enough to put that extra effort forward. And for the stuff that he was kind of figuring out, he kept me included throughout the entire process. He gave me a little bit of a discount on the pricing and, just all those human traits that just seem like, again, being a good person, it translates not only to, your own sense of conscience, but it frankly helps you be a lot more successful in the long run. People appreciate it more than, we probably realize.
And I think you hit on a really important success principle there, Chandler, that communication is one of those things that I find, especially with that's the main thing that that really kills your business.
Yeah.
If here's what'll happen. Somebody will get a job or they'll get in too deep or whatever, and they'll stop communicating.
Yeah.
Because you're scared to communicate to the client that you don't know what you're doing and you don't want to or that you've lost traction.
Yeah.
And so they'll stop communicating. And then the client starts being like, okay. And they just start pushing the button even more.
Yeah. People talk a lot when it's going great. Yeah. It's really easy to deliver good news. Super. Yeah. When it's kind of starting to, things are getting a little tricky, then it's like, oh, I'm in the meeting.
Yeah. So I've started trying, and the better I get at business and the more comfortable I get in my role as a business owner, the more I'm training myself to, as soon as a problem comes up, and that's the thing, as soon as the problem comes up, you send a text, because here's the thing, the human nature will be to wait. Let me just see if I can fix this without telling anybody.
Right.
But it feels so much better to just send a text and be like, hey, we just ran into something. I'm not sure exactly how to handle it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that I assess this in the proper way so that we attack this from the right way. So I need a couple of days, or I need a little bit of time to attack this. And you give them an option. You don't have to demand. You can be like, I could jump in and just do whatever comes to mind right away, or I could take a little extra time and properly assess this and make sure that I'm not thinking wrong about this. Is that okay? Does that work better? Or do you want me to just dive in? That way, it's not on you anymore.
Yeah.
If they told you just get it done no matter what, if mistakes are made, then I'll deal with the consequences. Wow. You just dropped all of your, most of your responsibility and your stress.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, for me at least, this business, and I'm probably way too emotional for the business I'm in anyways, because I'm so worried that they're going to see something that they don't like, or that, I'm going to do something that they don't like, or whatever. And so I have to learn to regulate that, but communicating, and I find the best communicators are the ones that send texts right away. Even if they don't know or they can't answer, they send a text to say, I'm not going to be able to answer that. I'm overwhelmed right now. Or I have a ton on my plate. Anyways, the communication is
that's huge, man. You got to talk to people, and they appreciate it tremendously. And again, it's not just when it's easy; it's when it's hard is when it matters the most. You got to keep people in the loop, and you'd be amazed, man. People are so nervous about what if they're mad at me? It's like they're gonna be mad if you don't text them back. They get so nervous about that. But just being honest and upfront is not only great, but we were talking about before, it's just so incredibly rare. I found sometimes people are just shocked to have even heard it. You don't get that anymore.
People are so grateful.
They really are.
I heard just the other day, I heard a client say, I'm on such good terms with this somebody who takes care of, it's a commercial space, that I send her a text and I immediately get a text back, hey, I'm on vacation, I'll be out for a week, I can't answer anything.
Yeah.
And she's like, I am so grateful to receive that text because now I know she's not ghosting me for a week.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's even if it's I'm not going to text back for a week. Awesome. At least I know.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know that she's on vacation at that point, she's just ignoring you. It's the little things, man, and they all add up. But, I think you've done a really great job with it. Obviously, you've gotten past that. I'm sure, look, we learn every day, especially, as self-employed. But I think you've gotten, pretty well past a lot of the initial technicality and figuring out a lot of things. And you seem to be doing really well, man. So I'm proud of you, and I'm really happy you took the time out of your day to do this, man. This is awesome. I really appreciate it. If you could, where can people book you, man? How do we get you some more business? Where can we find you?
Yeah, so Zack Of All Trades on the Facebook page. Honestly, most of my business is word of mouth. So
So go find someone that's done a job with it.
just go look at a really nice house in Mount Pleasant,
There you
in
go.
North Charleston, and
Fair enough. Well,
yeah.
I refer you out all the time. So if you buy or sell a house with me, you'll probably end up getting his number. But yeah, Zack Of All Trades on Facebook, you said, is where you do it publicly.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome to post my number. I take calls and stuff. I am on Thumbtack for demolition services. We do a lot of. I try to keep people busy, man, and so we do a lot of commercial things, do a lot of residential things. We do bathroom remodels, small things and big things. We could build you a new house or remodel your bathroom. So
beautiful, love it. Well, thanks again for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me. This has been so fun and good to talk with you.
Absolutely, man.